Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. Let's get into what's been going on in the season amongst the five big teams. We're talking UAE, of course, Soudal Quickstep, Bora Hansgrohe, Visma Leasebike. Those guys look stacked when we're talking about the classic season up in Belgium, starting with Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and Kern Brussels Currents. They dominate. 6 guys in small group of whatever you want to call left of the peloton. They usually had 6 guys in there, and the big guy, Wout van Aert, won over at Kern Brussels Currents, and they won with Jan Tratnik at Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. So those teams are going well. Ineos, out of the 5 top, strongest, best teams in my list up here anyways on Beyond the Coverage, are the only team that's really not dominating or haven't been on fantastic form. Thomas Pidcock looked okay. Egan Bernal, man, did he have a comeback. He looked good after racing in Colombia, came back, and of course he's at Au Grand Camino, and he went solid there where he was following the wheel of none other than the 2-time Tour de France winner from Visma Leasebike, Jonas Vingegaard. So they're coming up, but they're still not dominating, right? The other 4 teams are looking much better. When we start looking at the list of wins, you guys might think Visma Leasebike, after that domination that they played there at the Belgium races, at the Classics, and then, of course, with Jonas Vingegaard winning, you might think they have the most wins, right? They don't. Guys, they got 9 wins right now. Maybe they have more when this video comes out because they're winning all over the place, but they still don't have the most. The most dominant team, quietly being dominant, that is UAE Team Emirates. And Tadej Pogačar hasn't even started racing. He's going to start on Saturday when we get to Strade Bianche, which I'll cover on the butterfly effect. But UAE Team Emirates right now, really, when you just look at a list of wins, and remember, the beginning of the season, even when we're talking about the classic season already starting last weekend, is still watered down. There's too many races going on, right? So everything's getting a little watered, and when you really want to look at the amount of wins, UAE Team Emirates have the most amount of wins with 10 victories. Now, Soudal Quickstep have 10 too, but UAE Team Emirates, they have 10 victories with 6 different riders. Brandon McNulty won in Valencia, the overall general classification, and he won the individual time trial at the UAE Tour. Maybe they should have won with Jay Vine or Brandon McNulty there at UAE, but it looked like they were just sick on the last day. When they dropped that early, for sure there's a sickness going through the team, and that means they lost the race there to, of course, the Lotto Destiny rider who is Etvelt, who had a fantastic ride, and he's lining up at Strade Bianche. Could be one of the outside big-time favorites to give Tadej Pogačar a run at this weekend's white gravel race there in Italy. Either way, Italy will still be a watered-down race. You're like, Chris, who's watered down? Strade Bianche. It is going to be a little bit watered down. That's the way all of these races are in the beginning of the season. But up here on Beyond the Coverage, I'm here to tell you, when you win, and you win with 6 different riders, like UAE Team Emirates has, you know that team is dominant, especially when, like I said, Tadej Pogačar hasn't even started racing until this Saturday. So when you look at Visma Leasebike, you look over there, yes, I understand they're winning. They're winning good. Olaf Koy's winning sprints. We've seen him beat Tim Miller, but Tim Miller's been winning, was held back a little bit in that sprint, and he's been winning all over the place with something like 4 victories himself. And then when you look at Remco Evenepoel, he's winning. So when we talk about the 4 big riders in the European peloton, Jonas Vingegaard's already on top form. We saw him win Au Grand Camino, so he won and dominated and dropped everybody, won solo. If the time trial didn't get canceled, he probably would have won that too and dominated just like he did last year. Now, if you watch the coverage I watched, when you're talking about the GCN boys, who's now on Max, when you hear them say, well, Jonas Vingegaard wasn't as dominating in his wins as he was last year. I think he was even bigger domination in his wins. But we'd have to see his power files to actually see if his power files, when Jonas Vingegaard won at Au Grand Camino, if it was better than it was last year to really know. But when you look at the class of competition that he beat this year, that was the most stacked field that they've had in the 3 seasons of Au Grand Camino. So I believe Jonas Vingegaard's form has easily matched what it was last season, even though when he attacked on that first mountain stage there, and we see Egan Bernal trying to claw his way back there with Cepeda, we know at that moment, though, that that's a little bit higher quality field with Egan Bernal being a Tour de France champion and Giro d'Italia champion, and clearly his form's coming up, like I told you on Beyond the Coverage after I covered the Colombia race is there for Egan Bernal. So Ineos still have some hope with Egan Bernal coming up. We know G. Thomas is always cold this time of the season, so they're not going to be winning there with Ineos there. And of course, when we start looking at Tom Pidcock, it's still a little bit early for the British rider to start finding his legs. But Strade Bianche's starting, and of course he won last year, but he's going to have to win against Tadej Pogacar. And let me remind you, Pidcock, Tadej Pogacar can go on the gravel roads too. So it's going to be a very interesting race come this Saturday when Strade Bianche begins proper. Either way, when you look at UAE Team Emirates, like I said, with Brandon McNulty, Finn Fisher-Black's won, Adam Yates has won this season. I mean, Ayuso has won over at Fondrome, and then of course, he had his teammate Mark Hershey win the day after Ayuso won at Fon Ardèche. So they're dominating this early part of the season when you look at it. And of course, if you go up to the classics and you still look up there at Visma Lease Bike winning Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and Kern Brussels Kerns, I know it's the biggest, it's the best, it's the start of the classic season, but it's really not. When you look at it, again, it's watered down just like the other races are. And again, I'm only saying it's watered down because I'm going to compare it to some of the biggest, best races in the world. When Paris-Nice, Trino Adriatico, Milan-San Remo start, that's when we get into the biggest, best part of the season. Although I'll admit up here on Beyond the Coverage, the percentage is just a little bit less, but it's still less. If you take a rider that would have went 5th at one of the classics up there at Kern Brussels Kerns or Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, if you take it and then we start looking at Tour of Flanders, that rider might have only been 15th. That's how watered down it gets. You're still good. You're still a fantastic rider, but it's still watered down. Those are the facts, and that's what I like to bring you up here on my channel, are the facts. And right now, UAE Team Emirates look dominating when they're winning 10 different victories with 6 different riders. That's huge. Ineos are still falling behind the 8 ball there. And I haven't even mentioned Bora Hansgrohe. Bora Hansgrohe have some solid wins too, because Danny Martinez has been winning solid, and Sam Welsford has been winning when we're talking about the early part of the season for the sprinters. So, but 2 riders, but remember, it's not Paris-Nice time, so that means Primož Roglič hasn't even started this season. So Bora Hansgrohe have a number of victories, and they don't even have the big guy Primož Roglič, the Slovenian, one of the best riders in the world. There's no doubt about it, and he'll start at Paris-Nice. So if we go all the way back to some of the videos I've covered already on Beyond the Coverage, remember I told you we're going to have to wait all the way to Paris-Nice, and Saturday's race at Strade Bianche, it's still watered down, guys. I know it's great. I know they want to make it a classic, one of the monuments, but at this moment, you're not a monument if you're still a little bit watered down. And that means that there's still guys missing. Wout van Aert's going to skip it. He's going to go up to altitude training, try to focus on getting his form really high, and he's going to try to win Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders because it's missing from his resume. Not missing because he was lacking form in different years, but if you go back to the Butterfly Effect videos during those Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders, I explained to you why Wout van Aert doesn't have those wins on his resume, and if he's going to keep racing at the back of the field at Paris-Roubaix and miss the split when it goes in half, all the altitude training in the world probably won't bring you a win at Paris-Roubaix, big guy, if you keep riding at the back of the field when you go into a big monument like Paris-Roubaix. You got to focus on Paris-Roubaix from kilometer 0 all the way to the finish of the race. Don't do anything crazy. Don't try to drop a nuclear bomb because, of course, Mathieu van der Poel will be in the race, and Mathieu van der Poel is the one guy who's immune to the nuclear bomb of Wout van Aert and usually can out-trick you. So, be perfect. When you get to Paris-Roubaix, Wout van Aert, make sure you're always riding in the front group. Make sure your team looks as strong there as we just saw you at Kern Brussels Kerns and Omloop Het Nieuwsblad when you had 6 riders in the front group of a very, very small peloton that was watered down to begin with. And that's why when we see Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and when you see Kern Brussels Kerns, it's blown up with 80 kilometers to go, and you see a group of 20 riders, 30 riders, then 10 coming back because it's watered down. Once we get to Paris-Roubaix, once we get, of course, the Tour of Flanders, it's not going to be watered down like that, and we're not going to see a big explosion because the best classic one-day riders in the world are all going to be together, and you know Mathieu van der Poel is going to be there. So if anybody's immune to Wout van Aert and Visma Lease Bike, It's going to, of course, be Matthew van der Poel. His team's behind the 8 ball right now. They were behind the 8 ball last season, and they still came out swinging, with Matthew van der Poel getting bumped up to my top 6 list of the best riders in the world after he won that amazing Glasgow Road World Championships. Either way, the season has just started, guys, and I mean just started. We're not even quite there. We got to get to Paris-Nice before we start seeing one of the 4 big favorites start coming together, with Primoz Roglic and Remco Evenepoel actually battling it out to see who's going to start becoming the best #1 ranked rider in the world. And we're going to have to wait all the way until we start getting into Paris-Roubaix and the big time classics, when we see Wout van Aert and, of course, Matthew van der Poel start battling out to figure out who is the best #1 day rider in the world. And I have always told you up here, I believe it's Wout van Aert. But I also told you up here that Matthew van der Poel always finds a way to duke their Wout van Aert and get the bigger wins out of the season. So when I start talking about the 5 big teams and Ineos have faltered, I should start talking about 6, because Alpecin de Koenig should absolutely be in there. But they've been quiet in the beginning of the season like they did last season. So no big deal. Like I said, when we start seeing the big riders come in like Matthew van der Poel, you know they're going to start riding good once Jasper Philipsen starts getting his sprinter legs back up and Matthew van der Poel come together and make a great lead-out train there, so their wins will start coming up. Right now, though, the guys to panic, the guys who really need to panic, what I'm looking at, Ineos, even though Egan Bernal's coming up and looking better, Ineos need to panic a little bit, because their results, they're not looking super stacked right now. And they got their whole team racing. There's no Wout van Aert that's going to take an altitude training camp rest. Of course, Primoz Roglic hasn't raced for Bora Hansgrohe, so you know more wins are coming there. Matthew van der Poel really hasn't done anything to get interested in at the early part of this season, because he just did all the cyclocross and became, of course, cyclocross world champion. So they're quiet. That's all known. But Ineos, you guys are behind the 8 ball. Everyone else, Bora Hansgrohe's looking okay. UAE Team Emirates riding the best so far in this early season, I think. Visma Lease bike, can't deny what Wout van Aert did there up in the classics. There's no doubt about that. And Jonas Vingegaard, wow, you are still on form. And it's hot and heavy since, of course, last season's beginning there, when you won at Grand Ocamion there, and continuing it all the way through to now. Either way, right now the season's getting hot and heavy. Strade Bianche's coming next. Paris-Nice is coming on Sunday. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.